Hello everyone, welcome in. This is the first section of section 3, Why Do We Draw This Way? Fundamentals 2 of Shapes, with the first lecture on shapes being Shape and Volume, and Mogoon's Coloso class, Fundamentals of Stylized Character Art. So welcome in everyone. Just first and foremost to front, I apologize for the delay in the videos. There's been a lot of personal stuff going on. I've been planning out my UI UX approach come spring. Had a lot of mechanical issues with my car and I'm still figuring it out, so please bear with me. And then I've been considering if I need to remove my second job in order to have more time to focus on my portfolio work come spring, as well as just more time for content like this and my own personal art. And that's probably going to end up being the case. But in any case, I've been tossing a lot of those factors up in the air, so I've been a little bit busy and I apologize for the delay. In any case, you can always keep on top of if there is any delays or any other types of content produced by me on any of my socials, as well as just subscribing to the channel, and you'll be able to see new videos as they come out. In any case, I just hope that these videos help for those who watch. So getting right into the notes for today, this was honestly not a very dense lecture when it came down to taking notes, and that's just because a lot of it was going over and recapping a lot of the past fundamentals and approaches that we've learned from Mogoon so far, and bringing them all in together to essentially get a little bit further in the illustration process that we're working through with him. So a lot of it is just tips and stuff. A little bit is stuff that we've gone over in past reviews. So it kind of acts as a lesson review, as well as just bringing up a couple of other things when applying a lot of the fundamentals that we've gone over so far with Mogoon in our actual drawings. So to start, drawing form can best be approached by using a method of simplification, and the most prominent one is going to be what we call geometrical drawing, which is essentially just trying to port 2D shapes into 3D space in order to simplify them and make them easier to represent. So that's pretty much what that means here, and really it's just taking more complex shapes that we can't really express. I think the example Mogoon uses in his lecture is like a guitar, and then just drawing the 2D shape of it, using the transform tool to deform it into a 3D shape or like a rectangle that we've drawn in perspective, and then just refining the figure from there and really tuning it up to fit the form within the perspective. And it's pretty much necessary for drawing anything in 3D while doubling as a method for simplification. Like said, this approach pretty much takes on the assumption that you want to think of objects in 3D by starting simple and adding more complexity. Like said, you can pretty much just space them out within the perspective using cubes and rectangles, and then from there deform your initial 2D shape into that 3D space, and then just fill in the gaps. And then just some stuff on representing different types of objects that you might need in order to make this change. Besides the cube, you have a cylinder, which is pretty much just the cube, but with different top and bottom faces, which are just going to be circles. And then your sphere, which is pretty much just the same as the cylinder, but without the hard edge. And you pretty much just create a circle split between both halves of the square, and then you just round out the edges that the perimeter creates within that. Like said, you can use the diagonal midpoint of a cube's face to accurately draw a circle or a sphere. Mogoon shows a more detailed process of this, but truth be told, you can just find the midpoint of the face and then just create the circle around that center point that touches all the inside faces of the square. You want to use the angle of the faces on a cube to accurately draw the perspective of the angle of the object it's being compared to draw the two objects at the same angle, or pretty much just matching the face. So a good way to think about this is if you have a 1-point perspective frontal view of an object and you wanted to superimpose something on that face, the best way to draw whatever you're superimposing on top of that face would be to draw it also in a frontal view. So in the same way, if you're trying to superimpose something in a 2-point perspective on a 2-point perspective face, or a 3-point perspective face, or whatever and whatever forth, you'd want to be drawing whatever you want to impose on that face within the perspective first. Any 2D shape with a flat cross section can apply this method, so keep that in mind. This is a very loose method and it pretty much works for most objects so long as you can create that successful port of the form into the perspective. And you want to draw the basic underlying shapes, then draw a particular face, and then distort it onto the underlying shapes drawn in the perspective, like I mentioned with the guitar example earlier. Keep in mind that observing and understanding the underlying principles at hand will make working within them much easier in the future, which is pretty much just going to help you determine an intuition for when things might be wrong or the form might be a little out of place for the perspective. And then just some quick notes that Mogoon kind of brings up at the end of his lecture. You want to pretty much keep all iterative sketches on the side in order to include the best sketching elements from all of them. This is also very, very big, at least in web design, but also for showing potential employers for things like illustration. But documenting your process is not only very valuable to you, but it's also very valuable to your employer in showing them for understanding your insight for problem solving and your approach to art. This is super big in web design, and there's going to be a ton of employers that pretty much want to see your process and how you work, so it's just a good habit to have in general. As you're working through these iterative sketches, you want to be fixing mistakes continuously as you work through them, just anything that might look a little strange, and that way you don't have this big wall of changes that you have to make in order to move into the next design process, and instead you'll just be ready to set into what's next. With the principles that make this simplification process viable, you always want to draw in accordance to the perspective and the vanishing point to be able to do it effectively. And then, like I said earlier about the intuition that you gain, speed can be trained by utilizing the basic fundamentals and understanding them in new and various circumstances, so make sure you're just challenging yourself in different ways that still uses the same method. And then when you're learning, avoid putting yourself in an environment where you're learning other new information and focus specifically on learning only with the drawing. So pretty much it's not really recommended in general if you're playing like a podcast and you're trying to listen to that, or if you're trying to double task and work on another project. Mogoon mentions that music's pretty much okay, but that's like about the limit of it before you really start splitting your attention and you're losing a lot of the efficiency for understanding and practicing your own art. And then, like I said, draw lots to develop that intuition that we mentioned earlier on spatial awareness, which is pretty much just what it is. And then as a final note, but we're actually going to have a separate class that Mogoon mentions on this. Drawing lighting depends on getting the proper refraction on the object, which is going to be created by having a proper perspective on it, and then brightness of the object itself, which is determined by a proper form. So what this implies later is that a lot of the lessons that we're going to learn from this point on are going to be supplemental to what these fundamentals enforce. So it's really important that we're drawing in perspective and with proper form for our objects and scene. So as a quick summary to everything, understand how to draw ideas and complex objects in a perspective with proper form and geometrical drawing as mentioned earlier, and the process for that. Always draw considering the perspective and the form of the object, as pretty much everything else we're going to be learning and doing in the design pipeline that we learn from Mogoon are going to be based off of these. And then your intuition on drawing properly within these principles can be trained given time and experience for new challenges. And then the self-assigned homework, which is pretty much just what Mogoon showed at the end of his lecture, is to define 2 to 3 objects within the composition that we started in the self-assigned homework at 2.3, with a clear definition on their form within their perspective. So even just solidifying what objects you may have in the scene or with your character in order for us to really start nailing down that perspective and the form of the object. So that was section 3.1. Really quick lesson as mentioned, but we're actually going to be getting into section 3.2 or drawing faces with Mogoon and seeing a lot more of his personal style coming out in his sketches. So really interesting stuff to look forward to. And I hope to see you guys all in this next lecture review as well. Keep in mind that you guys can actually keep on top of uploads or any other content of mine or stuff like that on any of my socials, which I'll plug around here that you guys can check out and just take a look. Again, thank you guys so much for joining into this lecture review, and I hope to see you guys in this very exciting next one coming up. As always, I hope you guys have a good day, and make sure to take it easy. Bye-bye now.